Ready? At this time, I'd like to call the Physical Services Committee to order. Please call the roll.
Councilor Van Buren.
Here.
Councilor Emmons.
Excuse.
Councilor Gozick. Councilor McLaughlin.
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the July 18th, 2016 committee meeting?
Make a motion. Second.
Councilor Van Buren.
Yes.
Councilor Emmons. Councilor Gozick.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Is there any old business to come before this committee? Seeing none, moving on to new business. Item number 1, under authorization, Thomas Kells, DPW Commissioner, received a request from Keith Jones of Hands on Oswego to adopt out the planters located in Civic Plaza as a small memorial garden. Is anyone here to speak to that? Commissioner? All right.
Sorry, I think that was a mistake. That this project has been postponed until next year, until Amy Birdsall and I can sit down and talk about the specifics of what the memorial plaques will be. So I'm sorry that made it to your agenda, guys.
All right, we will take no action. Item number 2, Thomas Kells, DPW Commissioner, received a request from Jim Simborski on behalf of Buck Boosters and the Save Oswego Sports Committee for use of the city bandwagon on Saturday, August 13th, 2016 for a fundraising event to be held at Coloca Estate in Fairhaven, and there's an attachment. Is there anyone to speak to that about? Commissioner? That's actually been rescinded. That card as well. Sounds good. Item number 3, the City Clerk's Office received a request from Nathan Beasley, Charter Captain of Team Red, White, and Blue, for use of public space in order to host the second annual 9/11 Remembrance Run to be held on Sunday, September 11th, 2016. There's an attachment. I know there's somebody here to speak to that.
I'm going to keep that on the agenda.
Perfect.
So I'm Nate Beasley. I'm the chapter captain from Team Red, White, and Blue. Are you guys familiar with our organization yet? You've probably seen our crazy people run around with flags. So last year we did the inaugural 9/11 run. We had a pretty good turnout. We had 130 people. Everybody was pretty pleased with the race. So this year we're actually going to do it on September 11th, and we're really not changing anything. The request remains the same, starting at the East Side Fire Department, going through the city. I don't know if you have any questions about, any other questions about what we're going to do.
Anyone have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Councilor Van Buren.
Yes.
Councilor Gozick.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Moving on to item number 4, the Engineer's Office received a request from Phil Carroll, contract purchaser of properties located in the First Ward at 129 and 129.5 West Schuyler Street. Request to use of public space 10 foot by 18 foot for one car parking fronting 129 West Schuyler Street, and 10 foot by 20 foot for one car parking fronting 129.5 West Schuyler Street, between the curb and sidewalk. Mr. Carroll additionally requests use of public space 10 foot by 16 foot in front of building located at 129.5 West Schuyler Street for the removal of an existing gravel driveway in order to return to the lawn. Council.
This to make this area look a lot better, and they are taking all of the gravel that's currently in the front and returning it to green space.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
Councilor Van Buren.
Yes.
Councilor Gozick.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Item number 5, the Engineer's Office received a request from Mr. Eugene Frost, owner of property at 109 West Seneca Street, located in the First Ward, requests the use of public space 10 foot by 19 foot for a one-car parking fronting West Seneca Street. Mr. Frost has already paved the area and asphalt prior to requesting the use of public space, and there's a council.
I do not support this. Mr. Frost was well aware of what he needed to do before he put in the driveway, and he did not do that. So I do not support.
This is the item that we also shot down last. Is there any questions or comments? If you could, please. Just your name and address.
I am Mary Kay Stone from 121 West Seneca Street, and I am the block leader for the Oswego Renaissance Association block grant on that block. And I have contacted some of the neighbors, although they weren't able to show up because we didn't really understand that this was happening tonight, but they are mostly, everyone on our block grant is opposed to this. Mr. Frost did this without getting a city permit. He has also tarred over the only remaining green space on his very tiny front yard. He already has a grandfathered-in space between the sidewalk and the street. He removed trees and tarred over the spot between the sidewalk and the porch. And he almost butts into the roof of the house to his left, and there isn't enough room to put a driveway to the right. It's that tiny. And so this is just the opposite of what we're trying to do on this street, and I do not support allowing him to leave that there. Thank you.
Gentlemen, do you want to take no action on this, or do you want to vote it down?
I'd sooner vote it down.
With that, I will take a motion.
Make a motion.
Counselor Van Buren.
No.
Counselor Gozick.
No.
Counselor McLaughlin.
No.
Is there any other business to come before this committee?
Motion.
Take it away, man.
Motion.
Second.
Counselor Van Buren.
Yes.
Counselor Gozick.
Yes.
Counselor McLaughlin.
At this time, I'd like to open the Administrative Services Committee meeting. Please call the roll.
Counselor Corradino.
Here.
Counselor Van Buren.
Here.
Counselor Reynolds.
Here.
Counselor Walker.
Here.
Counselor Emmons absent.
I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of the July 18th, 2016 committee meeting.
Motion.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes?
Counselor Van Buren.
Yes.
Counselor Reynolds.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Is there any old business to discuss on this committee? Seeing none, we'll move right on to new business. Under authorization, item number 1, Justin Rudgick, Community Development Director, requests approval from the Common Council to prepare and submit the funding application for zombie and vacant properties remediation and preventive initiative. Rudgick?
Good evening, councilors. As the communication stated, I'm seeking approval to be able to apply for a unique funding opportunity that was done through the mortgage foreclosure process. The New York State Attorney General was successful in negotiating a bank settlement. So part of that bank settlement is this idea of creating the zombie law, which it allows for to provide funding for municipalities to address what we call zombie properties. And the zombie properties are properties that are kind of more or less in for crisis or foreclosure limbo. So they're properties that are being foreclosed on by banks, but either the homeowner has moved out of the house because they got the foreclosure notice, but the banks don't technically own them at that current time, where the ownership is still with the property owner. So there's this huge crisis regarding the zombie properties, and the New York State, as well as the Oswego County Land Bank Corporation, is looking into trying to figure out how to alleviate blight and vacancy in our neighborhood. So the city of Oswego was identified and invited to apply for between $100,000 and $150,000 of funding, specifically earmarked for the city to address this problem in the city of Oswego. This is an invitation only, so we are one of 10 municipalities selected to participate in this program. So I'm just seeking your approval to apply for this. The application is due on August 16th, and I'm looking forward to getting this through and working with the code enforcement team, as well as the Oswego County Land Bank, which I happen to be a treasurer of, and being able to really try to alleviate some of the blight and vacancy that exists in our neighborhoods.
Any questions?
Councilor, just a comment. I'd like to be the first to commend Community Development Director Rudgick. I seen this actually, and I figured you were already on it. But it's a huge problem today when we look at the momentum we've built over the last 6 months with the new administration in office and the new council here. We've made a lot of progress. I think we're going to see a lot more in the future. But this is huge. I have a meeting tomorrow with the mayor, with several residents from the 5th Ward to discuss a property near Kingsford Park that's been caught up in limbo for years. It's high time that something's done about this, and we really need to take care of it because people take a great deal of pride in their homes and in their property. And oftentimes we lose sight of that. We get $10 million from the governor, for downtown. Bottom line is most people in the 5th Ward, they care about their home and the surrounding properties. And, it's very frustrating when you invest time as a public servant and as a community member. Everybody's been working this, and it takes years and years. Hopefully this will facilitate and expedite the process. I I thank you, and I approve 100%.
No, I'll just further add, I mean, the idea of this program is to complement the existing and ongoing efforts of the Oswego Renaissance Association. I mean, they're trying to bring back, pride and confidence in restoring our neighborhoods, and this allows the city to have another tool in doing so. And Paul Stewart, the executive director of the ORA, is also a member of the Oswego County Land Bank, and we've met several times to talk about different strategies, and we'll continue to do that along with working with our code enforcement team.
Very good. Anybody else? Any other comments? Seeing none?
Second.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor Van Buren.
Yes.
Counselor Reynolds. Counselor Walker.
Yes.
And we need a resolution.
Roger, resolution, please. Thank you. Item number 2, the engineer's office requests approval to change order number 3 for the general construction contract with John R. Dudley Construction Company for the Charles E. Riley Booster Pump Station in the amount of $25,167, which would decrease the contract from $2,499,936.84 to $2,474,769.84. The contractor is offering a credit for the removal of abatement and demolition of the Church Street Pump Station from the original scope of the work. Is there anybody here that will speak to it? Well, is there any comments from the council?
Second.
Counselor Corradino.
Yes.
Counselor Van Buren.
Yes.
Counselor Reynolds.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Okay, item number 3, which I believe everybody's here to see, talk about. Assistant City Attorney Thomas Reynolds has prepared a local law regarding winter parking at the request of Councilor Caitlin Reynolds. Councilor?
Well, at the request of Council Reynolds, I prepared what I thought was a fairly basic, easy to follow ordinance, a lot easier perhaps than the one that we had most recently. And as I also prepared it in light of my experience as Assistant City Attorney in dealing with the parking appeals, I found that many of the parking tickets occurred when the parking ban was first imposed, because no one really knows when it was imposed, and we don't have the general circulation newspaper is not taken by as many people as it used to be. We don't have like our WSGO or any local radio station. So a lot of the citizens didn't know when the parking ban started. So I thought a specific regular date when it would start each year would be a very good idea. The other reason, because the college kids many times, most of the time, are gone by the time that the parking ban is imposed. They don't know about it. They have much less access or interest in local news and information that we have who are citizens here. And they come back, and then we have another round of several hundred parking tickets because they don't know anything about the parking ban going into effect. So I thought one of the very important things to put in there was a definite starting date, a definite ending date. The rest of the details, of course, are up for discussion, but they were proposed based upon how the parking ban was imposed and administered last year. Any questions before I sit down and let everyone else voice their opinion?
Any questions for City Attorney? Seeing none, and open it up to conversation and discussion. Anybody in the public would like to talk about this? Anybody that wants to talk, I need you to come to the podium. I didn't see you on the other side of the podium. How about, since you're up, you're first, and Cindy, you're second.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Pam Waite. I'm here this evening to discuss how the city's winter parking restrictions have impacted our community and me personally. I live on West 5th Street and feel quite fortunate to live in one of Oswego's beautiful historic homes, excuse me, for over 10 years. However, during the course of trying to sell our home for almost a year now, I've learned that it's not the house that gives the buyer pause, but it's the lack of parking, specifically during the winter months. Additionally, I've learned that interested buyers have received estimates to extend our existing parking pad to accommodate 2 parking places for over $25,000 and could not justify the extra parking to achieve adequate space, or excuse me, extra cost to achieve the adequate parking space. Another buyer had 2 teenagers, but determined that 4-car family could not be accommodated under the winter parking restrictions. Also, our neighbors have shared with me that their friends wouldn't even consider looking at a home due to the lack of parking during the winter months. The city's solution of municipal overnight parking lots has proven fruitless and embarrassing. Just mentioning to an interested buyer that they can park at the marina at cost, walk back to their homes, possibly in the dark and a blizzard, and then return to the marina the next day to shovel their cars out, has immediately ended any interest in purchasing our home. We have lowered the selling price of our house twice to combat the parking complications, and sadly, our house will not sell for the city's assessed tax value, which in result will result in loss to the city revenue, and it will have the ripple effect in our neighborhood. So this is my story, but it will become any homeowner's story that does not have adequate parking. So what is the solution? I'm sure that alternate side parking does not work without problems. It appears that there must be a compromise. Maybe same solution throughout the entire city is not the answer. I lived in the Fredonia Dunkirk area where alternate parking in the winter was a working solution. I do know that compliance with our current wintertime parking policy does not promote continued growth within our beautiful community or encourage new families to move into the city of Oswego. Thank you.
Can you just sit just 1 minute? I'm talking. I just wanted to ask Commissioner Kells, I should have done this before the public got a chance to talk. Commissioner Kells, could you share with us some of the operational concerns you would have with alternate side parking as proposed by Councilor Reynolds?
Leaving the snow on the road for 24 hours on one side will leave a large pile of snow, obviously, out in the road. It'll freeze to the road, causing damage to the plows, and making it very difficult to remove. It'll also put large amounts of snow into the driveways that is now frozen, that cannot be removed with snow plowing or snow blowers.
I think that explains the DPW's side of this. All right, thank you, Commissioner. Cindy, your turn. You're up. Number 2.
My name is Cynthia Snyder, and I'm a resident of Eisenhower Ave in the 7th Ward. The issue of winter parking is one that concerns not only the subset of homeowners that have no driveway to park in next to their home. It also concerns another subset of homeowners that do have a driveway that can accommodate 1 to 2 cars, but who are also the parents of high school or college-age children who happen to have their own car and no room to park it in the driveway. I find myself in that situation several years ago when I had 2 children who were both in college and both had a car. And it was very convenient because at that time, for at least a couple of the years, we did have the alternate side parking. And instead of trying to pile 2 cars on the grass and 2 in the driveway, when there's no parking on the road at all, we were able to put the cars on one side of the street or the other, the extra cars. There were multiple factors that contributed to the unacceptable street conditions that occurred the winter before last. These factors all need to be addressed when the area experiences high-frequency, high-volume snowfalls during the winter months. The first factor that contributed was that the snow accumulation was not pushed right back to the curbs each time and the corners cleaned up. The banks were allowed to creep out a little bit farther and a little bit farther until even the wide city streets could barely pass one car in each direction. And I live in a wide, fairly wide city street, and we found that you couldn't have a car parked on either side of the street midway through the winter because the banks had crept out into the road, and it was impossible. The sides need to be pushed back and the corners cleaned up each time that it snows. There also needs to be a plan in place so that when cars are parked on the wrong side or where they shouldn't be, the plow driver can easily radio to have the car quickly ticketed and towed away to a gated lot. The car owner should have to pay the ticket and the towing fee before being able to get their car back. The city has done this type of system in place for the 4 days of Harbor Fest each year for the last 28 years. I've seen cars that are blocking corners or cars that are illegally parked in other areas. The policeman pulls up, they're issued a ticket, and the the tow truck soon comes after that and tows the car away. So if we can do this during the 4 days of Harbor Fest, get the infrastructure in place with the tow trucks and all, why can't we do it in the winter? There needs to be a plan in place ahead of the first snowfall this fall to address all of the factors that contribute to impassable streets in our city. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Zuber-Bozick. I also reside on 5th Street in the First Ward. I just also want to speak out in support of my neighbor, Pam. I know that the Waits have been trying to sell their home this past year, and as their direct neighbor who butts up against their parking, I can say that my husband and I are concerned with the thought or the prospect that someone would want to come into a historic neighborhood and potentially erect some sort of parking structure in what is a historic neighborhood. It's very concerning. With all due respect to the gentleman who spoke about the potential issues with the alternate side parking, let's be honest, the snow doesn't just fall between 1 and 6 a.m., as we all know. With the complete ban that was done last year, my husband and I previously resided in the 3rd Ward over by the hospital and St. Mary's Church. We often found that cars would not move or the hospital would take over what parking, and the snow would not be cleared by 6 a.m. So that snow sat for days upon days until people finally did move. And our driveways were constantly blocked in with ice and snow. So I would propose potentially a 24-hour alternate. I don't know what was specifically in the legislation that you created, but I think that would be reasonable because I think to expect the DPW to clear snow within a 5-hour time period is just not feasible, especially with what I believe were some recent cuts that we made within the past year. So I would ask that please, in reality, when I was a child, I grew up in this area. We had 1 car, and that was just what you did back then. But most families have 2 working people. You need 2 cars. And for those that don't have any parking at all, I feel horrible. So just please give it some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Miles. Thank you.
And you can relate to this, Sean. It is not easy running a wing out there, okay? And 2 years ago, I had many chances to walk through the city and watch trucks back up because they couldn't get through there because the cars were tying up the road. I got to tell you, and it wasn't that much of a winter this past year, but I'm seeing something this winter that isn't going to be pretty here. And if they're going to load up the snow here, you got to get those cars off the road, okay? It's got to be passable. 2 years ago, the ambulance couldn't get through Ontario Street, okay? What are you going to do? And and I'm not going to pick on those college kids, okay? I refuse to pick on them because they're supporting this community. But you know how they are. They get a little bit out of control with the cars, okay? And Pat, you know that, okay? You've had that experience. Sean, you have. You're out in the county. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm saying? Look at this thing worked out last year. I know there was inconveniences. We had to walk a little bit. I walk to the store every day through 2 or 3 foot of snow. I don't care. It's only down the block. Come on, you guys. back when I was a kid, like those two back there, Jesus, we had to shovel snow. Oh, my God. They don't do that anymore, do they? We got to have a snowblower out there. And my father was a different person. You should have grown up with him. Okay? Look at this community is very lucky to have the DPW plowing. Because I've been to Fredonia when it got snowed up there. That's a peninsula up there, stuck out in the middle of Antarctica. Fredonia can get hit, and you know Buffalo's been pounded on before. How do you think they removed the snow up there? Thank you, Robbie. Okay. Thanks. Who's the experience of snow? Mr. Clark, the bigger snow you guys
I just want to piggyback off the idea of the housing. Oh, pardon me? Name and address. John Clark, 64 East Mohawk Street. The idea of removing some of these blighted properties was pitched, follow me for a second, in the 70s through community development. They wanted to remove those properties and put in little neighborhood parking areas, and they didn't do it. And it got kicked down the road, and they kept going with the ban. And our housing stock became devalued in part because people in a modern world want modern conveniences. So I would suggest considering removing some of those blighted properties, investing in that area with some greenscaping and some parking, and resolve some of the issues. But for the time being, to make the market better for people trying to sell their homes and for people that don't have any parking, such as myself. We live in a 100-year-old house. I can touch both my neighbors off my back roof. There's no room for any parking. So we could alleviate the problem in the near term with a creative solution like the 24-hour alternate parking, with a forward-looking idea of removing grotesque properties that have been allowed to become grotesque and investing in some parking that could alleviate this problem altogether and get the cars back off the road. But that's got to take a little bit of planning, and it doesn't seem like it's really a very difficult problem. If they'd have done this in the 70s as they had been talking about, we wouldn't be here today talking about it. We might actually be a little bit better community than we've become because we would have been doing some progressive things and people would have wanted to invest here. So anyway, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, and one last thing, Buffalo has alternate parking.
Anybody else? I'm sorry, you can't talk again.
Okay. I really came here tonight I was planning to come to talk about the alternate parking. And I'm going to try not to repeat any of the arguments given by other people to support alternate parking. But I am in favor of it too. My personal experience is I live in a two-family, and I can afford to live there because I have a tenant upstairs. And I rented it without a parking space because I have just one. And last year he walked back and forth the 4 blocks to Brightbeck. And he's a college student. I'm sure he survived. But I really would like to be able to offer him parking every other night on West Seneca Street because there is no parking at all on one side. And it just seems to make sense that you can't possibly, plow all the streets in the 5 hours that are offered. And I think we could deal with getting the streets well and completely cleaned over the course of one full 24-hour day. And then give a window of opportunity. I remember in New York City, between 6 and 8, you had to move your cars to the other side of the street, and you had that, window where you were not going to get ticketed. I would actually take it a step further and ask you to consider a full year-round 24-hour alternate parking. Because the other day when I was thinking about this, I saw the street cleaner come down my West Seneca Street and weave in and out among all the cars that are perennially parked there. And it left trails of dirt because there was no way to completely clean the street. And then I noticed that there's a lot of grass on my side of the street and none on the opposite side where there is never any parking because the cleaners can get to that side. And it is clean and pretty and looks normal. my side looks terrible, and now I want to get out an ice scraper and scrape up all that grass. But if there were times when that side of the street had to be clear, then the cleaning job would be easier. Now, I've lived in, some cities that have much less snow than Oswego, and they do not deal with it anywhere near the way that we do here. And I know we have great equipment, we have a great DPW, and frankly, 2 years ago, I was very impressed with how well they kept the streets cleared in extraordinary conditions. Last winter was not a bad winter, and of course, it was easier. But if you have extraordinary conditions, then put in a total ban to deal with that conditions. And for a few days, people can live with it. But other than that, just please let's, have some kind of a sensible alternate day, 24-hour on, 24-hour off, parking. Thank you. Because I don't want these landlords to feel like they've got to tar over all of our grass. And we have 2 in our block grants that feel like they have no alternative. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Molly Clark. I live at 64 East Mohawk Street, and I second Mary Kay's request for year-round alternate street parking. I have the same issue. The opposite side of the street is very nicely cleaned by the street cleaner, and mine is not. I have neighbors who have driveways, and they only use their driveways during the parking ban. I don't have a driveway. As far as Mr. Kell's concern about the heavy snow piling up, this doesn't have to be an all or nothing. We can have the 24-hour ban, but if we have a big, heavy snowstorm, you can put a temporary all-vehicle ban on. And there's ways to notify people. I've heard there's no way to let people know. Technology today makes it easy. If I'm a homeowner and I need to be notified that there is a 24-hour, all vehicles have to be off the roads, there's technology that you can use to notify people. The school district has their auto call where they call us with different things. I don't know how much that costs. I have a free service I use in my school where I can text parents messages whenever I need to. They just sign up. So there is an option for when we have really heavy snow, and yes, the snow plows need to clear both sides before it freezes. So think about that, please.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back, very patient.
So my name is Larry O'Brien. I live at the corner of West 4th and Niagara Street in the 5th Ward, across the street from Kingsford Park. I just wanted to make a couple of points. I feel like I've kind of religiously and responsibly put my cars away at night for, at least my family has for decades. And I know that this past winter was hardly worth talking about because it was extraordinarily mild, and actually 2 of the last 4 or 5 have been that way. But about 2 or 3 years ago when we tried the alternate parking, there was actually someone that would actually show up around 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, park his car just to the left of my driveway, which I happen to live on a corner. So it is, as it is, the DPW comes up and they turn their plow around and they fill in the crosswalks, which we've labored greatly for 50 years to keep clean for the Kingsford kids. And, that can't be helped. But then there's about 30 feet of road that needs to be cleared. And then it goes into my double-wide driveway, which, again, is my problem, but I elect to put my cars away. However, when this other person, who I have even no idea who it was, probably didn't even live on the block, he would actually show up every night around 9:30 or 10, park his car, and then someone would meet him, and off he would go. So then in the morning, when it would snow, the plow would not be able to get close to my driveway, and therefore I'd have to shovel another 6 feet out to meet where the plow was able to leave the remnants, and about another 20 feet, so I got another 140 square feet of snow to clear. And I've noticed some of the neighbors sometimes would prefer to just leave their car out in the street and not bother with their driveway. And it's just easier for them to come out in the morning and start up their car and drive away. And anyway, so I just kind of felt, I do feel sorry for the people that don't have parking, and I don't know exactly what the solution is, but I don't really want to have the people who do put their cars away penalized. I'd almost be tempted, if we have this 24-hour or if we have this alternate parking to, as I get older and it gets more difficult to clear that snow, I'd almost be tempted to put my own cars out on the street and not bother with my driveway cleaning anymore, just being honest.
My name is Tanya Miller. I live on 50 West 4th Street in the First Ward. And I wanted to speak after this gentleman because this is really a two-pronged problem in my opinion. We first of all have the issue of clearing the snow, and we have the people who don't have any parking or are a 2-car or 3-car family and only have spots to park 1 car. Those people obviously, as the lady who is trying to sell her house up on West 5th, are really going to run into trouble as time goes on. They can't sell their house. That the city loses money when a house is devalued. People don't want to move here because there's no parking. That is one half of the issue. The other half of the issue is what this gentleman is speaking of. In the area that I live in, there are several multifamily or multi-adult homes, shall we say. And my experience in the past has been that if there is any point in time where it is okay to park on one side of the street, many of the residents of those houses, because it is more convenient, will park in the street. There's a home behind me where traditionally 4 or 5 adults live. They have room to park 5 cars off the street. But if it is allowable at any given point in time during the winter for them to park on the street, say on one night or another, whether it's alternate parking or whatever, they do because it's easy. And therefore, one of the other things that I wanted to bring up is that possibly, especially in the more densely populated areas of the city, that I am definitely in favor of 24-hour, 24 off, 24 on parking for sure. But the other thing that needs to go with that is some sort of permit system to ensure that people who have, this is not to punish people, to say, oh, well, you can only have 2 cars in your house. This is to ensure that people who have off-street parking use their off-street parking, that they just don't park in the street because it's easy. That way they get to roll out of the house in the morning and drive off, and then they'll come back and maybe clean their driveway in the afternoon or whatever. Meanwhile, people who have no off-street parking are potentially looking at still not having any parking, even if we implement this 24-hour, 24 on and off ban. Thank you.
I'm Catherine Early. I live at 320 West 3rd Street in the 5th Ward. First of all, I just had a question for the council, because back in January when we had a discussion about this here, I might have got it wrong, so I just want to know. I thought there was an idea that within your group you were going to have a committee and study the parking conditions. You're smiling, Pat. Is that what you know? So I just wondered if there had been one, because I kind of thought, oh, you had some volunteers that would have done some research, and that I was thinking there was going to be some research presented tonight about maybe how many houses were impacted by, I mean, how many houses actually don't have parking spaces, maybe how many houses have multiple family dwellings or rentals, to get a good idea of how many people this affects. So, no committee. Okay, that's just one.
Could I just respond?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I know, and I've talked to Catherine. Catherine's in my ward, and I think just where to start with this. But anyway, going back to what you're asking here, you know, I have personally researched, and I just want to come out publicly as saying that I am in favor. I'll be honest with you, I've looked at the pros and cons here, and I have some questions I'd like to ask tonight. But I would like to see the city back to the parking bed with exemptions, okay, just like the Utica style. If you go and look, I've researched it pretty extensively, looking at Utica's permit policy. They have very stringent permit requirements that need to be met, like there are 15, 20 of them, and you have to follow all of it and adhere to it, whereas with the city here, I think today, we're looking at a vocal minority of people that have really important concerns that need to draw to our attention. If you don't have parking and you live in a historic district, obviously I don't want to see a parking garage in a historic district either. I always stand up for the preservation of our historic and cultural resources and landmarks. And so when you look at this here, I just like to say, I want to come out and say I am not in favor of this proposal on the table tonight for alternate parking in any way, shape, or form. But I have looked into it, and I think that we could accommodate those people reasonably and make it so that they are able to park on the street. Where some of the concerns I've heard tonight, just to address, the one lady who had said how everybody would take advantage of parking, in the street if they could, or Mr. O'Brien, who's in my ward right around the corner from me, that he's going to give up on even trying to get in his driveway and might as well just, can't beat him, you join him, park on the streets. I mean, that's open, and I haven't heard, I just want to mention one other thing. I haven't heard anyone express the issue of safety concerns. We're looking at convenience, we're looking at property value. But I think the most important thing we need to consider is the well-being of our citizens. And I received a packet from a whole bunch of DPW workers who have accumulated experience of well over 100 years here, 18, 31 years. I looked at a couple of letters. And this was a big issue. Emergency vehicles not being able to get down streets, more chances for accidents, with snowbanks extending out as it takes an extra day. So I would also look to the expenditures for the city. And I didn't want to jump back and ask some of these questions, but I had read through the notes I received, and there were some arguments in favor of the law that was proposed tonight, or the amendment to the law, and it argued that overtime for DPW would be reduced. But from what I've gathered from the DPW, it would appear that overtime would actually be heightened because of the fact that it would take several days to order plow. You can't just plow one side, they're going to have to come back out again. And when you look at the wear and tear on vehicles, or on our city equipment. So I had some questions I wanted to ask, but I would say I have researched, and I like Utica's model where we have a parking ban, like Oswego's always had, with exemptions for people that truly need it. And I should add one last thing. I'm not certain, and I want to preface what I have to say by saying that we have a lot of great landlords in Oswego, but there are some unscrupulous landlords, and I can't find any other reason why this was put in the first place, this alternate street parking, other than apparently to appease some of these landlords. Because what we're seeing today after 2 years of the alternate parking is houses packed. Okay, I have some issues with people right now that are going through code enforcement. We're seeing landlords packing 6, 8 people in apartments, and they can do that because they don't need to have parking. My father's a landlord, and when he bought a house and he opened it up, you know what he did? He took the time and the money, he built an extra driveway, so 4 people lived there, and there were 4 driveways. I understand some people don't have the land, so if you're living in a historic house in the first ward, this permit policy would allow for those people to be able to park in the street without any problem, but also it would address the issues of public safety and possibly cut back on expenditures for the city and wear and tear on our equipment. So I don't know if any other councilors wanted to chime in, but I wanted to at least put that out there. Thank you.
Well, Counselor, I would say that if you all had a committee, that's the kind of research that we would all hope would come out of it that might be presented to the public. I do want to say, when I asked around my neighborhood, independently of Mr. Clark, a lot of people did voice that same idea about maybe this is a good time to take some blighted properties and make neighborhood parking lots. So there are people who support that. And I just want to say one thing, Mr. Kells, I really think you guys do a good job, but now that I've been through several winters here, I can't buy into the idea that if we change the way we plow, that our driveways will not be piled up with snow, because we've tried everything, and if you go away for a while and you come back later in the day, your driveway will be covered with snow. I don't think it would matter what side of the street we're plowing, but the other thing is that I do think a lot of people said that this is something you don't have to do citywide, that change might be the best suited to different neighborhoods. But I can tell by the people here and the people that I've talked to that it is really something to give serious consideration to some kind of change going forward.
Thank you.
Evening. Brett Smith. I'm on West 5th Street. We just moved in December, but I moved into this city about 15 years ago from Ithaca. Ithaca, Southern Tier, Finger Lakes, I've heard the response that they don't get lake effect snow. It's true, but we get snow down there, and we get quite a bit. And Ithaca has successfully done alternate full-day parking for years down there. Now, 15 years ago, when I was 18 and I knew everything about the world, I parked in the wrong side of the street one night, and I got a ticket. And I never messed that up after that event. So I'm not maybe pro 24-hour alternate parking. I'm pro some parking. We live in a very historic, beautiful city that, let's admit, we need to be a little more progressive about joining the next century. So if our response is stop everything and let's ban everything, I don't think we're doing a good service to the rest of our public. So So I did bring the 3- and 5-year-old kids here tonight, and no, they do not shovel yet. I'll work on that this year, all right? But walking 4, 5, 6 blocks to the local convenience store or grocery store with 2 children is difficult. So not being able to park as close to home as possible, it's difficult. If I'm at work and my wife's home, I can't expect her to go out with our children and have to face that with walking blocks to pick up a car, and then driving, and then coming back, walking with 2 children and groceries. It's just not feasible. We got great news today as a city with a clean energy standard. We all know what that means for the jobs in this town. Let's think about our biggest employers here, the college, the hospital, Entergy, Exelon, and Novellus, and they all have some form of shift work. And we all know that the snow does not stop falling at 6 a.m. So when they come home, and they park on both sides of the street, because now in our current model, that's available at 7 a.m., how do we clear the roads at all? I'm telling you, we can, as a community, come together, preserve our green space, preserve the historic value of our city, and come up with a better solution. Let's try something. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Steve Phillips. I live at 53 West Seneca Street. Just 2 things, I guess. First is a question and clarification to Councilor Gozick.
Yes.
Did you say that this is a vocal minority that
I
is
would
here
say in a
tonight?
city of 17,000 people, at least in the 5th Ward, when I campaigned, I had about 85% of the people ask me first thing point blank where I stood on this issue. And I know, and there's people like Catherine Early and Jim Early that I highly respect their opinion, but we can also agree to disagree. And on this one, I do disagree. I feel that the people in my ward feel strongly, and I believe that the people that came down here tonight should be commended. But I believe it's a minority of citizens in Oswego that are inconvenienced by not having sufficient parking. So I don't know if does that answer the question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. I would just respectfully disagree. I think I've talked with hundreds of people, and I don't have anybody telling me that they like the ban. I think most citizens don't care what we do as long as the streets are clear and that they in fact can park. But there is certainly a downside to that. The other thing is just when you talked about safety. How safe is it for a mom with 2 kids and her groceries when she comes home but she can't park in front of her house? She has to park 4 blocks away, and then she has to carry her groceries and her kids back to her house. There's a safety issue certainly there.
Yeah, I would agree.
Or an older person, or virtually anybody. I think there's got to be a compromise. I think the other thing is enforcement of our laws. If a fire truck can't get through because there's cars on both sides of the street, we should have a policy that says there's no ticket, you just tow. We certainly, you tow somebody once, and they probably won't park there again. So I think there's safety concerns on both. I think we need to look at enforcement and make sure that everything is certainly cleaned up. The other thing is just when we look around at other communities throughout central New York that have as much snow as we do, they're doing 24-hour alternate parking. A lot of them are. And I just can't believe that if we do some research and we talk to those folks and find out how they're doing it, that we can't adapt it to our program here. Thanks.
Hi, Mercedes Neese, 128 Erie Street, 5th Ward. I'm very lucky. I have tons of parking at my house. My street does not have an issue where people can't park. But I would like to see a consideration. First off, I want to agree with you. I heard that there was going to be a study of the parking done, and I think it's serious enough that it should happen. But I think there are some streets in the community that do need to have alternative side street parking. And why does it have to be all or nothing? Why does it have to be the whole city? Why can't we designate those particular streets so that the DPW knows those streets need to have a different kind of attention. And, you know, if the citizens, the neighbors on that street say, you know, say it isn't part of the alternative side parking, but they're finding they're having issues. If the majority of the citizens on that street appeal to the council, the city, and say, we want to be part of the alternative side parking, then they should have the opportunity to do that. I do think this is serious enough to have a study. Absolutely, as you were saying. So that's my take on it. Again, I live in a woo. Okay. Oh, okay, it's Miles. So anyway, that's my suggestion, is that we really do have a serious conversation, and I appreciate that John has gone ahead, looked at some other communities. You know, what works for one place may not work for another, whatever, but I think if the DPW didn't have to address every single street with alternative side parking, but boy, some people, you know, there are houses that have no parking, and that affects real estate. I used to be in real estate before I moved here, and that is just a huge, huge problem. And yet you have these fantastic little houses on little properties that are almost like mini townhouses that folks that, you know, work at the college, they would embrace that kind of property because it isn't a high maintenance property, but they're in a city and they can walk and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that was my thoughts when we started talking about this a while ago. So I would like to see a more in-depth study, if possible, and consideration for the neighbors to, you know, apply the majority or whatever. They could get signatures of everyone on their block and come to you and say, gee, we'd like to be part of the alternative side parking situation. So that's just a couple thoughts that I have. Good luck.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Lori Nash, and I live at 71 West Cayuga Street. Right now, I'm living in a house that has just a parking pad at the front, so we only have space for one car. My husband and I both teach at the college, and sometimes I need to go to Albany on business, so I take the car, and then he just has to walk into school. So as we know, when it's really, really bad out with the snow, the sidewalks aren't plowed, so he has to walk on the road, and it's very, very inconvenient. So without another place to park, we just, you know, don't have the option of having a second car. I do like the idea of alternate side parking throughout the year. I think that's a great idea. But the idea of some kind of a permit does appeal to me, because I could imagine people, as the one gentleman said, having room to park in their own driveways and then just parking on the street. So you talked about a stringent criteria for people accessing permits. I think stringent might be the wrong word, because I fear that people who need it wouldn't get the parking permit, that there has to be some guarantee that people, when they're buying a house, that they can get the parking that they need. So I want to see something where people who need the parking are getting the parking. And I think we know that there's many houses that have no parking. You know, I've walked by some people's houses and think, I can't believe this place could actually sell because there's no parking. I just have tried to imagine what the people do who live there, and I guess I'm now hearing tonight they're walking a very far way to have parking. So I'd really like to see some action on this. The idea of a survey is great. It seems like as we're going towards the end of the summer and into the new year, we need some guarantee, though, for people who are already here, some sort of guarantee that they'll have parking. And the people who are trying to sell their house, I think they need to know now that they're going to be able to sell their house. So I think we have to act on this as soon as possible. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Oh, and all respect to the DPW, I appreciate the work that you do. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Lisa Glidden, 135 East 10th Street in the 2nd Ward. So just two things. One is that we do have a mechanism to contact people to let them know when they need to clear the streets, because I got a phone call like 2 nights ago about the bear being in my neighborhood and don't approach it. So, and that came from the Oswego City Police Department, so there is some kind of mechanism already in existence. And then the second thing I will just pass along is that on the safety, having the outright ban just from 1 to 6 a.m., I think a few other people have said this, but it doesn't stop people during the day from parking on both sides of the street. So you can park on Ontario or on West 7th Street near Burn Dairy, which I drive down often because my kids' daycare is right there. During the day, it gets parked up on both sides, and even though there's no parking in the middle of the night, you still can't get 2 cars down that block, because then the ban ends at 6 a.m. and people are parking. So it's basically like all the inconvenience of not being able to park at night with not really improving the safety anyway. So,
Thank you. Councilor Gozik?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just to respond to the last speaker, maybe Commissioner Cowles would like to chime in on this, but I couldn't help but notice, like, the letters I received from some of the DPW guys addressed where you were mentioning one consideration that I hadn't thought of either, was I have one from the Building and Streets Maintenance Supervisor. He said, in addition, this plan that's being proposed tonight, it would result in unsafe situations for both city residents and the DPW drivers, with snowbanks being larger than normal. Now, again, when they're larger as they grow out, then they're harder to remove. So, also, we had from the Streets and Maintenance, another Streets and Maintenance Supervisor at the DPW pointed out that if they cannot keep the snowbanks pushed back, streets don't remain wide enough. So little by little, one of the concerns of our drivers, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Kells, is that with this, as that creeps out more and more, the streets get narrower. And if you live on a narrow street like I do, on 6th Street, like I live on West 6th near Kingsford Park, it is a big concern. And so I just wanted to share a couple of these things, only because I had thought of this, and we had the garage supervisor over there as well at the DPW pointing out the same thing. I find the streets, another negative I find is the streets do not get pushed back or widened as well compared to plowing both directions during a snow event. And the narrowing of the streets then has to be addressed by our 2 snow blowers that are close to 40 years old. And he goes on, but the point is that one of the issues is that it encroaches on the street little by little. As you wait another day to remove the snow, it's going out further and further, and the streets are getting, so even if you have the alternate, that space is limited. And I could also point out from my own experience, and constituents that called me just in the last day, like today, when you're trying to back out. If you live on the other side of the street and you've got a line of cars and the streets are narrowed, I can barely get out of my driveway. I wake up at 5:30 and leave at 6 o'clock to go to work in Pulaski every day. Yeah. It is very difficult, and I know it would be a little better, but I'm not in favor of the alternate street parking, but I did want to just draw that to the public's attention, only because I hadn't thought of that either, but I wanted just to address your concern.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, back again, Mercedes and East 128 Erie. Forgot one item. I really feel that the study is so important because the decision shouldn't be made just because people came tonight. Not everybody in the city can come here and speak to you, but it's still your job to figure it out. So, sorry, I know it's a really hard job. I admire every one of you, and I know the time that you put in, but there are many people out there with many different thoughts, and I know it's easy to get a call where people complain about things, and maybe that's the majority of the calls that you get. But there are plenty of people out there who aren't here tonight for many reasons, but are still active, caring people in the community, and have thoughts and opinions about these things too. So that was my thought.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, Pat, I know you're not going to vote on this, but for next week, I'm actually in favor of the alternate side of the street parking ban, or at least certainly for the neighborhoods that really need it. I think that encroachment is going to happen regardless, is my, because even there's no parking ever on my side of the street, but backing out or pulling out forward gets really hard as the winter goes on. So, okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, yes.
Heath Jones, 130 East 3rd Street. I am one of the fortunate ones that has parking at my house. We have a shared driveway with our neighbor, and I would say most of the vehicles on our street have driveways as well. So I don't suffer the same things that you guys do all of those times. But we did have a good experience last year with the parking ban on our road because we have the ladies' home that's down the street from us, and the ambulances were everything kind of flowed a whole lot easier there. I would say that my personal opinion is that there should be some allowances and permits for homes that don't have parking, because there's just some impossible places, and they should be able to access their cars in case of an emergency or otherwise too. But to speak what Merce was speaking about as far as the study goes, I know for a fact that there was a group at the college that were working on different, I don't know what kind of study or what went into that, or even what the results were, but I haven't seen those results published anywhere, and it might be helpful before we start making changes or anything like that, if the city could actually give a presentation of where the problem areas are and what the results of the study that the college did were and things like that. That might help the people here all get on the same page and actually have a full understanding of what that is. I know that I've been fortunate enough to have conversations with the DPW commissioner as far as how many miles of road are being paved and how long that takes, and all of that was really enlightening for us. And I think that it would be maybe if we could do like a 15 or 20 minute presentation at some point on what that actually looks like so people can really understand, instead of there being a lot of hearsay or this is my problem versus their problem kind of situation. I think that just some education would be good. Thank you, guys.
Anyone else? Somebody in the back? Bruce.
I'd like to say first off that I'm one of the few. I live in the 7th Ward. My name is Bruce Holman. So I don't really have any skin in this game. But I think what everyone has said, everybody around here has have good points. What we're lacking, though, is somebody that has the knowledge and the skills to develop a plan that will address the biggest part of this. What we need is, number one, we do have to have the thing with the plows. I understand that. And ideally, it would be the best thing if you didn't have anybody on the street, so it makes it easy to plow. But you do have concerns with people, that the elderly, the infirm, the multiple families with multiple children, and two couples working, not necessarily on the same shift, getting home at different times. You have the safety issues. What we need is to have a group, and I'm not even suggesting it be a group of counselors, because I don't think we have anybody in here with the expertise to do an evaluation and make a rational decision that's going to affect everybody. So one of these days, we've paid enough money with consultants to give us advice on a lot of different things. This might be a time to get somebody that has the expertise and the knowledge to look at our city, look at the historical district, and decide what can be done that will enhance the ability of DPW to do their job, whether it be in the winter or during the summer seasons when they do street cleaning or snow plowing. Take into consideration the issues of safety that are out there that we all should be concerned with, and then to not reject any possible solution. Now, I've gone on record with saying that I think you could have parking garages that would benefit this process. So don't reject outright. I lived in a town, a historical town, and they had a strict historical code through there. We built parking garages that meshed right in with the historical nature of the city. It can be done.
It just takes a little bit of planning. So all I'm asking is, number one, you got to do something this year. I recognize that. I mean, we've waited too long. You have to make a decision. It's probably not going to be a decision that everybody's going to like, but you have to do it. But let's get a group together of people that have the knowledge and the expertise to address this issue. Talk to all the counselors. Take the input from the various individuals that have spoken here, and perhaps draw from the rest of the community that might have input, might have knowledge, might have experience, might have lived in different areas and seen how things went, and put that together. And for next year, hopefully be able to come up with a good decision. And I can't advocate one way or another. I won't advocate whether it be a 24-hour ban or alternate street parking. But you have to consider the citizens of the city that live in your wards, all 7 wards, how what decision impacts it. And it's not a one-size-fits-all, because you do have people out there that it won't impact, but you've got people in these areas where you got these very small streets, and believe me, I walk enough of them that even if you were to say alternate sides parking, there's not enough room to get one of those big plows with their wing through there. I mean, if you get it through, there's going to be you're going to throw snow all the way up against the house. So you have to consider those type of things. And like I say, a one size doesn't fit all. So I just suggest be open to all inputs, but let's get a group together somewhere, even if we have to hire a consultant. Never thought I'd say that. But hire a consultant, though, that has knowledge, though, can do the planning for you, that takes all inputs. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in?
If you have that study, then when every year you don't have to set change because another group complained. You will have said, we've done a study, and this is why we made this decision. You know, then you don't have people flip-flopping.
Okay.
You've done your own.
Thank you. Oh, there's one more. Back row.
Hello, my name's Joe Scanlon, and I live at 115 Liberty Street. In a 2-block area from Bridge Street to Oneida, there's 15 homes. And out of those 15 homes, there's 5 that are owner-occupied. And the balance is, the majority is college rentals. And at one time, when I moved in there, the west side of Liberty Street was no parking, all the way down. And for some reason, some of those signs have disappeared. Don't know why, but there are still some there. And one of those rentals at one time had 11 students in there. And they all insisted on parking in the street. So I am against. I want all banned parking. And I understand the problems of some of the families. And I did like Councilor Gozik's idea, permitted, along with the all banned possibility. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Well, at this point, Councilor McLaughlin.
I'm one that's been against alternate parking right from the get-go, pretty obvious. My feelings haven't changed, but I put in front of each of you a copy of a proposal that pretty much would help satisfy most, if not majority, of these people. Little tweaking may be needed to be done, but it's the basic building block of a idea.
Well, at this point, we have a lot of input from the public, and we wrap things up soon, but not just yet. Mr. Tesorerio, would you like to speak?
Well, I'd like to know what that proposal is. My name is Mark Tesorerio, 54 West 5th, 1st Ward. I kind of want to engage Mr. Gosick on some of the things that you said. Well, first of all,
I'm sorry. I'm just hot. We're ready. We're going to be here a bit longer.
well, I know you're a history
No, I was
guy.
just hot. Sorry, Mark.
I know you're a history guy, so did you know that Edison, when he failed with the light bulb, people said that they were overwhelmingly for candles and against light bulbs? So, I mean, the alternate parking 1 to 6 a.m. did not work. And I think what people are saying is that they were against that not working, and they're for clear streets. So I think when you engage people, I think that they're saying they want clear streets, not that they want a ban. Because if I have a chance to talk to someone for, say, 5 minutes, they end up saying, okay, well, I guess I'm not for the ban, I'm just for clear streets. So, you know, there's been a lot of things in history that, you know, people said, oh, I'm definitely against it, and then they changed their mind. So, you know, I think Edison failing with the light bulb, I did look that up, and people said they were overwhelmingly against light bulbs and for candles. So here we are. The other thing is, most people don't go to work at 5 in the morning, so the way it is now, if there's cars on both sides of the streets, most people are going to have to back up with a car probably there. So, you know, that's my question. To you, my other thing is, are we serving the DPW or are they serving us? Would be the question. Because, I mean, if they have concerns, they should have been addressed, I think, before we had this meeting, which would have been good for the committee to have met, but that didn't happen. But I think we really need to make clear that the taxpayers are the ones that are in charge, not the DPW. And whatever's most convenient for the taxpayers, the DPW should find a way to do it. And that said, I've had some issues with my sewer and some things near our house, and the DPW's been great. So I have a lot of confidence that they can fix this. If we tell them this is what we want, I think they'll be able to find a way to do it. I know you mentioned Utica. Utica is a stressed city, so I would not want to do anything that they do, probably. I don't know if the parking is one of the reasons that they became distressed, but if you look at any city that bans parking at night, they're usually distressed. It'd be like Fulton, other small towns that you certainly wouldn't want to be like. And we have a lot going for us in Oswego, and I think if we go back, it's just not good. Ma'am, with the mayor, so I'm done engaging you, if you want to.
Yeah, I would like to respond. Well, by and large, when you get involved with public service, obviously, Bruce said you can't please everyone, and everyone isn't going to be happy on this. But I represent the constituents of the 5th Ward, the demographic of my ward, and as Mercer pointed out, we have a ward where there's plenty of parking. So in my ward, when my constituents, when I run, and 700 people go out and vote out of like 2,000, and you hear from 15 or 20 of them on an issue, and you've also engaged them personally, because I went to every single door to over 1,500 houses, and knocked on every door, and made it a point to. And that's one of the reasons why
I guess how many answered?
Well, I was going to say, I was elected because I promised that I would uphold and try to serve the constituents of the 5th Ward. But I also have heard tonight that, and I agree again, that we're here to make decisions for the whole city. And that's why to take an issue like this and convolute it and overcomplicate it, I have a strong feeling that we'll end up back at the drawing board again. So for me, I've lived in Oswego virtually my entire life, except when I was away at college, and we had a parking ban. And I can also address concerns earlier, Mr. Phillips. Yeah, talking to a couple hundred people, this is a town of 17,000 people. So a couple hundred is a minority. And when we go back and look, like when I've looked at a house, and anyone else I know, I would never dream of buying a house, purchasing a house, or living in a house where I don't have adequate...
Well, let me just ask you a question real quick.
I just want to finish. Adequate parking. And again, this can be a concern. And yes, I understand that a girl, to respond to Mr. Phillips, that a woman, a single mother, whoever it is, walking with a child, that is a safety issue. But it's also a safety issue when we can't get up and down our streets, we can't get out of the streets, work on time, risking smashing into another car, the damages. Our DPW also, I wanted to point out, to a certain extent, we have to work with what we got here. And it's not a question of whether or not the DPW serves the people or the people, however you spun it there. The point is that we need to do what's easiest for them. We have DPW does a phenomenal job, but they're undermanned. The equipment, a lot of it's antiquated. Some of the plows are 40 years old. I know people that personally have worked there and been plowmen or wingmen on it, and it's very difficult work. We don't give them enough credit. People go, oh, it's just a job. You're going to do like any others. It isn't. When you're going down those roads, you can't get down the roads, and an ambulance can't get down, or a police car can't get down. I feel my concerns are very valid, but I'm totally open to listen to people. But at the same time, I did want to address those concerns because I don't feel that because of our parking ban, like to make it this complicated, that it means we're in league with communities of Utica or Fulton are considered to be blighted, and Ithaca and wherever else is considered to be more progressive. So, I mean, with those issues, I think the bottom line is we really maybe should have a study presented before us, and perhaps the best thing to do is to table it at this point in order to accommodate everyone. But I can't see how a ban with exemptions, and I would also like to address Ms. Nash. Right now you can get a permit, but a lot of people don't like it. I know Mr. Phillips probably wouldn't with the Renaissance, but you can actually come to your counselor just if this isn't resolved, and we can approve through the police department. You can actually park like on your front lawn or if you have space. I know a lot of people don't like that. The reality is, that is possible, but the Utica style one, are we using the term stringent? I just wanted to clarify. I think it's fair. It wasn't that it made it more difficult, it's just you had to adhere to it. You had to take care and maintain that part of the street, and it wasn't like it was too stringent so nobody could get them. I think it's there for people that need them and not to be abused by landlords that are stacking 7, 8, 10 kids in a house and are not providing adequate parking. This is for people that own their own resident, that own their own homes. And, it would be, I think that it would be easy to get, again, I just wanted to throw it back out there.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Desiree, would you wrap things up for us?
Sure. So I just think it's important that we come up with a solution before we do the study because, as you can see, some people have their houses for sale or, a lot of people are getting called back now to the nuke plant since it's probably going to stay open and people will be coming back. So there'll be houses on the market, and I think it's better to have a solution, maybe even if it's not perfect, rather than table this again like we did in January because people are going to be coming and then you're making those houses not marketable if we can't say, okay, this year we have alternate parking. So yes, this house is a possibility for you since you have 3 cars. So I think I had a couple other things to say. As far as parking on the lawns, now I lived here till I was 18 and I thought it was completely normal to park on your lawn. And with the mud and everything, and then you just, reseed it in the spring. But we've had people come visit us, and a lot of people, like to consider moving here, and I definitely push it. But one thing that happens is they come in the winter, and they're like, why are people parked on their lawns in the mud? And you're like, you can't park in the street. You can't park in the street? What? So, it gives a bad impression of the city when you allow people to park on their lawn, especially since most of the time there's no snow, and it's just, you're in mud. So I think that's a unique Oswego thing that we think that's normal, but that's not normal. And when people come here, they're probably going to say, I'm not going to live in that part of the town because I don't want to see that. So what I'd like to see is Councilor Reynolds' proposal passed, and then we would still have time to possibly modify it. I don't know how long it is before there has to be a public hearing, but I don't think we can wait again because keep kicking the can down the road, I think is just a bad idea. But I was wondering with Pat, are we allowed to know what your proposal is? Or?
I'll show you afterwards, but remember, it's in the works. It's not going to be the end of everything. Each and everybody here will have a say on what goes on.
So if we put Caitlin's proposal forward, there'd still be an option to do something different in the meantime and vote on that and vote no?
Either voted and pass it on to the council next week or not have a no vote table it and not act on it tonight. And then we have time to discuss all these other options and all these other issues that people have brought up very eloquently.
My only problem with that is we've had since January to do that, and nobody's done it. So unless we're going to form a committee, tomorrow and get started. I know that Adam Avery was supposed to be here, and he did have a study done by a statistics class at the college, and they had 3 groups that did it statistics-wise. and said we needed to have some parking for people, and then there was also a lot of snow, and we needed to accommodate plows. 2 of the 3 groups came up with 24/7 alternate. The 3rd group came up with, like, post a bond, and you can park on your lawn, and if you don't put the green space back, you have to pay the bond, but obviously that's, very complicated and, a lot of work. So I know there was something done, and I'm surprised that that hadn't been passed along to you guys, but I do think it's important that we get this resolved as soon as possible. That's all.
Yes, Council.
I'd like to say something on this. When we brought this to the agenda, I was going to bring it a couple weeks ago up for discussion only. But when we got that $10 million grant, we wanted to vote a little bit, so we didn't want to bring it that following one. So after the fact, Caitlin brought it up, and then I called her. This was just supposed to be for discussion only, and then I called the secretary, and she didn't put it on there for discussion only. This is all this was supposed to be for, just discussion. We aren't going to make no decision on this.
Thank you. Council?
I just want to echo, obviously I am for the alternate street parking. But I share many of the issues that go on that have been said in this room tonight, but the one that I want to talk about is safety. Councilor Gozick, you talk about safety of getting emergency vehicles up the road. That is great if there are no cars on the road between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m., but what about 6 a.m. and 1 a.m. when there are cars on both sides of the street? Emergency vehicles cannot get up and down the street. If we have alternate side parking, they're on one side, that does give us more room. The other side of the safety thing is it is not safe to have residents walking blocks in the dark on the ice in the wintertime from a parking lot that's several blocks away back to their house. I understand that we have 7 wards, and each ward is different and unique, and this is what will work for my area, and the discussion tonight has been great, but I really don't think that it is safe to have the parking ban. I don't think that makes it safer.
Thank you. Anybody else on the council?
My name is Janine Pitters, and I live in the 1st Ward, and I am definitely in favor of the alternate parking, 24-hour alternate parking. At my house, I have no garage, no parking spot, no driveway, and I own a residence. I'm not a renter. I have 2 college-age kids that are at home with me. So we have 4 cars, no place to park. I wish that I could put a driveway in, and I have had it quoted, and for my particular property, it would be over $50,000 to put in a driveway of any sort. And I would love to do that, but I need a solution that's fair for me, and not just for me, for everyone in my neighborhood. Everyone that I know would love to have this alternate parking. And even if you have guests come in the wintertime, like some other people have said, you have to say, well, I would love for you to come visit. I'm not sure where you're going to park. And it's been an extreme challenge. I know that the neighbor who lived beside us was allowing us to park in their grass because they weren't there over the winter time. And then the very last day, my son got a warning ticket that he wasn't supposed to park in the grass. And we don't really want to park in the grass anyway. We agree with a lot of other people. It's very tacky. I've never seen this done in any other city. So it's for me to have to walk 2.5 blocks to Lake Ontario, basically, to park, is a crazy option. I think what Caitlin has been proposing is very fair. I think it's actually more safe to have everyone on one side of the road rather than having people on both sides of the road part of the day. So If you guys have a better solution, I'm willing to listen, but right now I have no solution. The solution is to do what Caitlin's asking the city to do. And the other thing is, when the plow trucks come from 1 in the morning till 6 in the morning, they make so much noise. They wake me up every night. I never even get a full night's sleep. So if we were able to plow the streets all day long every day, I would be a much happier person for it. Yes? You have any questions?
Thank you. One more?
Hello, my name is Adam Avery. Sorry I'm late to the party. I live at 104 West 5th Street in Oswego, obviously. I don't know what was said because I'm just arriving late, but I just wanted to bring to your attention that there was a study, quote unquote, that was kind of handed over to some students at the college by the traffic committee, Bob Ruggio, with this problem and see what the best solution is. If anybody is interested in those three, there was 3 different groups. They took the current, off-street parking. They took the old one we had, off-street parking from 2 to 6. They took parking with bond. So they took 5 or 6 different solutions. They basically put some numbers to it as far as what would make the majority like happy long term. And 2 of the 3 studies came back 24-hour alternate street parking. I also am a property owner here in Oswego of rental property and a business owner, and I believe that those studies overall are correct. I will say that obviously they're done by students with maybe some little data as far as like how big of a group they actually tested the marketplace. But I think that overall, after I've been talking and I've really been researching, what other communities are doing. Buffalo, Cortland, Binghamton, they're all 24 alternate street parking, and it's working for them. So I definitely hope that that's being discussed. I hope that it's being encouraged. I really believe, one of the things that Mr. Mayor has brought to my attention when he was running, people basically, even couldn't get by. They were worried about, buses and emergency vehicles. Alternate street parking 24-hour would allow, obviously, the center of the street and the right of the street for that passageway to happen. 24 hours a day in our city of Oswego. The other thing I like to bring to attention is we've all been there where it's, no parking. The police go out and put 24-hour parking signs out so the DPW can run the snow blower down and cut that bank back. Now that won't even need to be done because there's going to be half the street that's always empty for them to do that, even during the day or night, for that snow blower to cut that bank back and make our city safe. So if any of anyone's interested in those 3 studies, I'd be happy to email them to you and have more discussion on it. Please, endorse and pass what Ms. Reynolds is attempting to put through. Thank you.
Thank you. Council. Thank you. Appreciate the past history of the council's attention or inattention to this topic. Yes, one more?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out, Mr. Gozick spoke about safety. I live on East Mohawk Street between 5th and 6th. The only municipal lot on the east side is Price Chopper. This year, due to the kindness of neighbors, I didn't have to park all the way at Price Chopper, but that's their generosity. They could withdraw that at any time. So you also want to consider city liability, because my route home takes me along East Park, which is city sidewalk. If something happens to me on that sidewalk, city's liable. And I have pictures this winter of an elderly woman walking down the road on 4th Street because the sidewalk in that area had not been cleared by the DPW. So if you're going to have us parking far away, you're going to have to make sure that the DPW gets those sidewalks, at least on the city sidewalks, cleared just as timely as they're getting the roads cleared. Or there may be other expenses. So that's just another thing to bear in mind when you're considering this all-out ban.
Thank you.
And just as clarification, I was just going to say, at least from what I understood of the Utica law, it was for permit, address the permitting adjacent to homes. So that's what I would hope, is that under the, what I had brought up anyway, that you would be able to, that would be eliminated, and hopefully in a large part because people that really needed that would be able to park right next to their home, I'm hoping. I agree with you 100%, Mr. Phillips and Mrs. Clark. It's outrageous, but I agree that is a concern, definitely. Just as big as getting an ambulance or a fire truck down the street.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Joe Rogers, 50 West 5th Street. The concern that I've got today is that these are the same discussions that we had last winter. And at that time, when it was voted upon to have no parking whatsoever during the wintertime, we were told that somebody would do some homework. No homework's been done, so all we are today is sitting here. Yes?
Saying none of us did any homework.
Do you have anything new to present?
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay. But if we, somebody's got to somebody's got to communicate something to us if something was studied. And I'm not talking about, a volume of book, but some communication needs to be presented. Or all we're doing is bringing up or rehashing the same stuff last year if there isn't anything new. If there is something new, we'd love to know about it before we get up here and say something. That's all. That's all I'm asking.
Yes, I'm as frustrated as you are.
Okay.
Nobody has done anything.
I understand. And I'm not speaking directly to you or anybody, but if something was studied other than the kids at SUNY, we'd like to know what it is. And if there is something something different, or it's something that you liked about some other location. It doesn't need to be anything really formal. This is what several other cities of the same size have done. Stuff we might like to hear, stuff we may not like to hear. You know, it's not going to be all one-sided. It's not going to be everything that we're going to want for people who want to park on every other side. We just want to know that something was done over that period of time, because honestly, between now and the first time the snow may fly, we may not have this resolved. That's all. It may not be. I'm just being realistic. If it's not going to be resolved by then, all we're doing is just opening that scab, pouring salt in it, and saying, you know what, next spring we'll look at it. And many people in this group have offered to at least canvass the area, sit down, give some input, do some research, call other cities. It doesn't need to be all you guys. That's what we're saying. We can bring some things and just keep throwing it into an email address and then compile it, and maybe something will click for all of us. That's all I'm asking. I just want some progress. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Second. Jennifer Zuber-Bozek, First Ward. Just to echo that too, I mean, I have, unfortunately, and I know, like Caitlin was saying, people become disenfranchised. I would love to be here every week, but because of work and other commitments, I can't be here in the audience. But I do watch the YouTube, I do watch other things to try to stay as involved as I can. And when these topics keep coming up year after year, it does get frustrating. I echo that, you know, it was said that this would have been taken care of this past year. I had assumed the study had been done. I just received a postcard that we are now doing a dog census. So apparently my Yorkshire Terrier is more of a precedent than the parking of the city of Oswego. So maybe we need to look at the priorities of the city, and I would have hoped this would have been done by now. But
Thank you. Look at this.
One sentence.
Keep it brief.
I can't. When the study occurred, the one thing I've heard from a couple councilors tonight that I don't think the public knows is, and I'm sorry that Mr. Pelton is here, because of this, is that it keeps coming up how difficult it will be for DPW, but yet that information is not public. I'm very empathetic to them, and I see how hard they work, but no, I've never seen anything in the paper, I've never seen anything that was discussed about why is it very difficult to have cars on one side. So I'm just saying that I would like that to be part of the
Thank you. I mean, at this point, let me just chime in here real quick. You know, I've listened to everybody's thoughts and concerns, and everybody has brought up some very, very good points. And I do take exception to the comments that we're not doing anything. I mean, it's August 1st, and this is not October 1st.
Yeah.
We are talking about this, and I checked the forecast before I came here tonight. I didn't see snow in the forecast. So, and this is the year 2016, and this is a different council. So we are committed. This was part of the process. As Councilor Walker said, this was a planned meeting. We wanted to do it 2 weeks ago, which would have been the middle of July. Now it's August 1st. This is the whole process that this council has decided to take in addressing this. August 1st. And I understand everybody's frustration. I drive in the city. Everybody here drives in the city. We're all well aware of trying to get down Erie Street and not being able to go down because you had to wait for the car coming from the other direction. How a fire truck can't get down the road, or an ambulance. I mean, safety, the DPW concerns. We've talked about this for an hour and a half, and we all know, everybody in this room knows the issues, and everybody in the city does. As Councilor Gozek said, 17,000 people, they all couldn't be here tonight, but everybody knows. If you live in the city, you know all these concerns. So I propose that we get together during the next 2 weeks, the next cycle of committee meetings, during the next 2 weeks, we get together and come up with, it may be Councilor Reynolds' plan, but come up with a tangible plan. As I said, it might be that one, it might be a hybrid of that, it could be anything, but I'm committed to get this done 2 weeks from today and have a final vote. Are there any questions on that, or comments, or complaints?
Every ward area of the city, everybody knows. So that's what I'm looking at. gotta look at, say, the fourth ward. There's always something different there. There's a few people without parking spots, just a certain section of that area. And I got a lot of other people that are saying, we hate them. People parking on the road at all. So we just gotta go area by area. That's why I'm looking. But that's a lot of costly money, signage, and more work for DPW, putting them up, taking them down. There's cost to everything. So I'm looking at everything. And like I say, I'm the fourth ward representing them, so I'm trying to look after them too. So we're after everybody. I know Mr. Clark over here, he's always been on the parking, always. But I'm trying to work with him, get something in there for him. There's areas that every ward has, you can look at, it's all different. So I don't know if we can work something in the whole as a city, or do it area by area. That's what I'd like to look at a little bit more.
Obviously, no plan is going to be perfect.
No plan's going to be perfect.
Not everybody's going to like whatever we do come up with.
Yeah,
But,
you're going to
but,
have people mad at us no matter what.
but I think after tonight, we're all committed to get this done, and I'm putting the time limit of 2 weeks from today to come up with a substantial plan for us to vote on and pass on to the final council. Is that okay with everybody else? Is that agreeable? We have a deadline? So can we no vote this, or do you want to have a vote?
No action.
No action taken? Is that okay with you, Counselor, since you sponsored this? 2 weeks, promise. Okay. At this point, is there any other comments or issues not related to parking? Seeing none? Second?
Second.
Counselor Corradino?
Yes.
Counselor Van Buren? Yes. Counselor Reynolds?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.